Part 38. My Love Simulation with Them. Author, Chiudeo Udaziiwe. Chapter 372. This sound also made Matsuzaka Sayuri subconsciously raise her head. Subsequently. Then she saw it. Under his messy black hair, Nan Xiang looked at him with his eyes. But it's different from before. At this time, the corners of Nang Xiangshi's mouth curved upward. That's a smile. From her perspective, it was just an ordinary smile. But Matsuzaka Sayuri has never felt like she does now. Furujing's heart has always been unwavering. It was as if a stormy sea had been stirred up. Smiling is a very common thing. Even she can smile with a gentle and powerful smile. But that couldn't be compared with Nang Xiang's smile at this moment. It seems that he is born with the ability to arouse the desires of others. It seems that he is born with the ability to arouse others' desire to possess the smile that is so perfect no matter from any angle. It seems that as long as someone sees the smile, they will fall in love with Nan Xiangshi. Fall in love with his face, his eyebrows, his voice. Matsuzaka Grana seemed to understand at this moment. Why did Nang Xiang say the words, "Aunt Matsuzaka, do you think you can release my desires?" If we say she is a witch with the ability of enchantment in ancient times, then the Nang Xiangshi in front of him was undoubtedly the charm itself. Sayuri Matsuzaka's deep cabbage eyes widened. Because she discovered that she, who was used to seeing heavy winds and heavy rains, was completely unable to resist the charm of the black-haired young man in front of her. The next second, her face began to surge with astonishing heat. A burning feeling arose. She had never felt such an emotion before, and she was even a little overwhelmed. The key is this posture. I had never felt this posture before. Why do you feel so embarrassed when you see Nang Xiang? Sayuri Matsuzaka couldn't understand. If Matsuzaka Sugar was here, you would definitely be surprised to find it. The aunt who was supposed to be able to deal with any man with ease and no pressure, now actually showed an expression similar to that of a little girl. Even the gentle voice that was so smooth before actually became a little trembling at this moment. Nang Xiang-kun, if you have something to do, we will talk about it later. Let me down first. Face to face. Moreover, the smile full of indescribable magical charm when she looked at Nan Xiang head-on made her completely unable to resist. She made the request. But don't let go. Why? Matsuzaka Sayuri's eyes widened. She looked at Nang Xiang in front of her in disbelief. This is my punishment for Aunt Matsuzaka. Nan Xiangshi's eyes showed a hint of teasing. The wrists holding Matsuzaka Sayuri's soft waist did not relax, but tightened. This Matsuzaka Sayuri has really bad intentions. He only sat down for 3 seconds. This person started to touch him. This is because he was the one seduced by the other party, so he didn't succeed. If it were other men, it is estimated that she has been leading him everywhere by now. Moreover, the other party had just touched him, trying to seduce him. Tempting me, right? Let you see what is the temptation of appearance worth 10. How does it feel to have Nango Akane's perfect magical smile at full power? This was the first time that he had fully unleashed his Nango Akane's magical smile ability. And it's still cheek to cheek. This effect can be said to be 200% effective. Nang Xiangshi refused to let go. His eyes were looking directly at Sayuri Matsuzaka in front of him. Didn't Aunt Matsuzaka say that? She said she would let me do whatever I want and vent my feelings. Are those words all lies? He gently reached out and pinched Matsuzaka Sayuri's smooth chin. Aunt Matsuzaka has to take responsibility for me when it turns out like this. It's a bit inappropriate to just want to leave directly like this, isn't it? He hugged Sayuri Matsuzaka's body and at the same time leaned close to her ear. Ah! Matsuzaka Sayuri opened her mouth and made a sound. She never thought that something like this would happen. You must know that she has always been in charge of this kind of thing. As a result, this time she didn't expect to be tightly restrained by Nang Xiangxi, she was simply being manipulated by Nang Xiangxi, and she didn't even know how to resist and reject him. This gave Matsuzaka Sayuri a feeling of confusion. This was completely different from what she had originally imagined. She should be the one who had Nang Xiangxi, an innocent high school boy, firmly in her hands. She adjusted her breathing. But once his eyes met Nan Xiang's smile, his smile turned weak. The words that were originally in my mind became extremely subtle at this moment, like a little girl's aggrieved speech. Nango-kun, what exactly do you want me to do? She knew that she had completely fallen into Nang Xiangxi's way. His attitude also softened. The whole person became much more honest at this moment. Very good. Nang Xiang felt the changes in Sayuri Matsuzaka and nodded slightly in his heart. At the same time, he felt a little helpless in his heart. Facing Matsuzaka Sugar and Matsuzaka Sayuri, he obviously felt that the number of times he had betrayed his sex had increased a lot. But there is nothing we can do. Who makes these two people like this? No. Think about it the other way around. It seems like no one doesn't like this, right? He thought silently. Then spoke. It's not impossible for me to let go, but Aunt Matsuzaka has to pay a price, right? Anything is fine. I can listen to you. Matsuzaka Sayuri just wants to be liberated from this state. After hearing Nang Xiangxi's words, she nodded without hesitation. This is what Aunt Matsuzaka said. Listening to Matsuzaka Sayuri's words, Nang Xiang smiled with satisfaction. At the same time, he did not forget to remind Matsuzaka Sayuri, say it first. You can't go back on your word later. No matter what I ask you to do, you must do it. Even if you ask me for help, I won't let you stop. Even if you call me tired, I won't let you stop. The meaning of this sentence is really too ambiguous. Matsuzaka Sayurika's eyes fluctuated. But in the end he nodded, I understand, Nang Xiang-kun, please let me down first. Good. Finally got Matsuzaka Sayuri's promise. Nan Xiangxi didn't hesitate too much and released the other party from him. Call. Sayuri Matsuzaka, who fell from Nangashi, let out a soft breath. She never thought that she would be threatened into submission in such a way by a young man who was no more than 17 years old. So much so that his face is now flushed. She gently straightened her messy skirt and hair. At the same time, she also heard Nang Xiangxi's words. Aunt Matsuzaka said just now, right? She will do anything. Hearing this, Sayuri Matsuzaka nodded subconsciously. She doesn't even mean to keep her word on this matter. In that case. Nan Xiang showed a little smile. The footsteps also approached Matsuzaka Sayuri step by step in the next second. There's actually something I've always wanted you to do. He approached with a smile on his face. That smile made Matsuzaka Sayuri seem to understand something. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi. Chapter 373. Her face was flushed and she couldn't help but lower her head. Sure enough, it feels so much more comfortable this way. Nang Xiang made a sound of enjoyment. And in front of him, Sayuri Matsuzaka was lying weakly on the fire rug at the edge of the kotetsu, panting slightly. Her face was flushed, as if she had just experienced a strenuous exercise. And this is indeed the case. Sure enough, this is an environment for people to live in. Open the French door. Sunlight falls into this otherwise dark room. The strong smell just now has completely disappeared at this moment. The floor, which had not been cleaned much before, was now even more clean and shiny. The rubbish in the room was also taken care of by Nango, she called Matsuzaka Sayuri. When I came here before, it didn't look like an environment that humans could live in, but now it has changed drastically. Aunt Matsuzaka can still do it if she wants to. Nangxiang felt comfortable and praised Sayuri Matsuzaka on the ground. Although he has no misophobia. But the room just now didn't look like a place for conversation. So let's just let Matsuzaka Sayuri take care of it. And Matsuzaka Sayuri is much more honest than before. She raised her body from the floor, looked at Nanxiangshi's face from time to time, and whispered. Ah, thank you Nangxiang-kun for the compliment. It seems that Nango Akane's perfect magic smile is really effective when the power is fully turned on. Nangxiang noticed the changes in Sayuri Matsuzaka. Very satisfied. This is how you look like an elder. Speaking of which, Nangxiang-kun, the takeout you ordered will probably arrive soon. Different from the aggressive one just now. Matsuzaka Sayuri is obviously much more well behaved now. She has changed her clothes again and reminds Nangxiangshi. Okay, please, Aunt Matsuzaka. Ordering takeout was Nangxiangshi's second request. After all, it's already 12:30 after all the commotion at home. He was also a little hungry. So I simply wanted to eat at Matsuzaka Sayuri before leaving. What Nangxiang didn't expect was that Matsuzaka Sayuri had no habit of cooking at all. I've always been ordering takeout for a living. The refrigerator is basically empty. So Nangxiangshi simply asked her to help order takeout. Eating takeout is quite a luxury in Japan. After all, in countries like Japan, manual delivery costs are much higher than in China. A little further away is a huge deal. But Sayuri Matsuzaka invited him to eat, so Nangxiang didn't have any worries. Clean the house. Ordered takeout. Nangxiangshi didn't hesitate and simply called Sayuri Matsuzaka to sit directly opposite. Aunt Matsuzaka. Yes. His body shook violently as if he had a stress reaction. Nangxiangshi. Although Matsuzaka Sayuri is very good in the state and is very obedient. But there is a feeling of timidity. This made Nangxiang a little helpless. But it was he who caused the situation after all. He could only continue to ask patiently, as I said before, I came to visit because of Matsuzaka-san's matter. I would like to ask, have Matsuzaka-san's parents passed away long ago? Matsuzaka Sayuri glanced at Nangxiangshi. Then he nodded, yes, Sugar's parents passed away early. In other words, did Sugar always live with you, Aunt, when you were a child? Absolutely. I raised granulated sugar single-handedly. Sayuri Matsuzaka didn't hide anything and nodded. Knew it? Nangxiang sighed. Combined with Sayuri Matsuzaka's behavior before, Nango Toki finally understands why Matsuzaka Sato is so persistent in love and other emotions. It turns out it was all your fault. Staring helplessly at Sayuri Matsuzaka, Nango shook his head speechlessly. A small child. He receives Matsuzaka Sayuri's twisted education every day. Don't become like Matsuzaka Sugar. That's a little strange, right? Nangxiangshi couldn't help but glare at Sayuri Matsuzaka. Don't cause any trouble for me. This Yandere family. Chapter 262. With Matsuzaka Sugar's daughter? 8,000 words. Most of the reasons for Matsuzaka Sato's lack of emotion were already figured out when Nango arrived here. It's nothing more than Sayuri Matsuzaka using her set of theories to educate the young Matsuzaka Sato in terms of ideology, if that can be considered education. Because in Matsuzaka Sayuri's view, as long as you can unconditionally satisfy all the desires of the other person, this is love. But this kind of education is obviously completely different from ordinary values. Matsuzaka Granis was naturally confused about this. I have never experienced serious love. Growing up, she lived with a guardian like Matsuzaka Sayuri who was obviously wrong. It will obviously cause a deviation in Matsuzaka Sugar's self-perception. It's no wonder that the other person cannot understand what love is and how to express his love through appropriate means. After all, adults have a great impact on children's childhood. Nang Xiangxi finally figured out the reason. But figured out why. Next, there was another question before Nang Xiangxi. That is whether to continue the simulation. After figuring out most of the reasons, it shouldn't be much of a problem to go directly to a happiness simulation. But if that happens, the relationship between Matsuzaka Sugar and himself will further deepen. After all, after passing the happiness simulation, the memories from the simulation will automatically appear in Matsuzaka Granu's mind. Instantly gain happiness and memories in the simulation. Matsuzaka Sugar's symptoms of emotional loss may still not be relieved. She might even do all sorts of extreme things towards ending the band, Akane Shinjo, Ryo Futaba, and the others. This made Nan Xiangxi hesitate. All yanderes are actually mentally unstable. It may become extreme after being prompted by certain things. Although he may also act as a suppressor for Matsuzaka Granu, just like Matsuzaka Granu simulates a chime, keeping her in a stable state. But that state. It was too hard for both him and Matsuzaka Sugar. He wanted Matsuzaka Sugar to experience more emotions that she had never experienced before. Rather than just living by his side as his slave. That kind of life is undoubtedly wrong and unhealthy. Nang Xiang sighed slightly. Lost in thought. Next to her, Sayuri Matsuzaka fell into thinking when she saw Nang Xiang, and did not dare to speak while sitting on the other side. He stayed up like this until the delivery guy came to the door. After a brief meal of takeout, Nang Xiang stood up. Immediately, his eyes turned to Matsuzaka Sayuri. And Sayuri. He spoke. Why? Matsuzaka Sayuri, who had been keeping quiet and secretly looking at Nango, trembled when she heard the other party's voice. Then he raised his head hesitantly. After seeing the expression on Nang Xiang's face, Sayuri Matsuzaka was stunned. It was different from the devilish and charming smile before. At this time, Nang Xiangxi's handsome face was full of sincerity. It was so clean that she couldn't take her eyes away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi. Chapter 374. It was under the gaze of Matsuzaka Sayuri that Nang Xiangxi continued to speak. And Sayuri, although it may be strange for me to say this, I still hope that you can take good care of Matsuzaka-san, and at least set an example as a parent. He looked at his surroundings. After cleaning, the whole room was clean and tidy. After ventilation, there is no odor anymore. If Matsuzaka Sayuri could act like such a guardian earlier, presumably Matsuzaka Sugar will not become the emotionless girl she is today. But Nangoshi's words aroused a little resistance from Sayuri Matsuzaka. I have always loved Sugar. Yes. She has always loved Matsuzaka Sugar. Whether it's education or other things that girls should have, let the other party have them. Elementary school, junior high school and even high school. She bears almost all the tuition fees alone. I've already worked so hard, so why should I be dissatisfied with Sugar-chan? Sayuri Matsuzaka's cabbage blue eyes stared at Nango. She really couldn't figure out what else she could be dissatisfied with about Matsuzaka Sugar. Mere material satisfaction cannot satisfy spiritual emptiness, and Sayuri. Do you really think you have done a good job? Or, do you really love her? Nang Xiangxi asked her calmly. Of course I love Sugar, and I have done my best. If it comes to other issues, Sayuri Matsuzaka has no intention of giving in. Comparing herself with her own, she felt that she had done her best. But, is this really the case? Nang Xiang raised his head, looked steadily at Sayuri Matsuzaka in front of him, and slowly asked the next question. If that's the case, why doesn't Matsuzaka-san refuse to let you have contact with her friends? Even after she has enough independence, she is unwilling to live with you. Yes. Sayuri Matsuzaka kept giving Matsuzaka sugar love. But in reality? However, Matsuzaka Sato was alienated from her and was not even willing to let her interfere with her life circle anymore. This question is raised. It really stunned Sayuri Matsuzaka for a moment. But she spoke quickly. That kid just hasn't figured out what love looks like yet. That's right. Matsuzaka Sugar just doesn't understand how love is expressed. There is no doubt that she loves Matsuzaka Sato. Regarding this issue, even if Nang Xiang was standing in front of her, she would never back down. But if this is really what Aunt Sayuri said, then why is Aunt Sayuri not willing to give Sugar even simple companionship? Why? Matsusaka Sayuri opened her mouth. Usually all food is taken out, and the room has not been cleaned. Since you claim to love Matsuzaka-san very much, why are you not even willing to cook a meal for her? Nanzayongshi raised his head. He had takeout. Sayuri Matsuzaka also ate takeout. There isn't any food in the refrigerator. Presumably Sayuri Matsuzaka has lived such a life from a long time ago. Matsuzaka Sato lives this life with no ability to live alone. That's because, I also have my own life, I also have to give love to others. When Matsuzaka Sayuri's cabbage eyes looked at Nango, she tried hard to refute. But the rebuttal voice seemed to become weaker at this moment. Because Nang Xiangshi started talking again at this time. You have satisfied all the desires of others. Is it difficult to give this to her? He stretched out his finger and pointed at himself. Even if I am a stranger who just came to visit today, you are willing to spend time and energy on me. What about Matsuzaka-san? Have you been watching Matsuzaka-san's growth unconsciously with a playful look? Nang Xiangshi's voice fell completely. This made Matsuzaka Sayuri's fingers tremble slightly. Because just like what was said when I was with Nang Xiang. She had never noticed this all this time. In other words, she didn't really care about these things, she just lived according to her own ideas. She thought about when she was about 5 or 6 years old. Matsuzaka Sato, who was wearing kindergarten clothes, once pulled her clothes corner and asked her softly. "Aunt, do you love me?" At that time, Matsuzaka Sato's face was full of innocence, and her pink eyes seemed to be bright, which made people pity her. At that time, how did I answer the question of Sugar standing in the shadow? Sayuri Matsuzaka has long forgotten. She only remembered that after she told Matsuzaka Granu the answer, she looked at him with a very teasing look. She was secretly looking forward to it at that time. Looking forward to what kind of girl such a clean and pure girl will become when she grows up, and what kind of path she will take. She is really looking forward to it. But in that feeling of anticipation, have you ever loved Matsuzaka Sugar? Or is it all selfishness? Sayuri Matsuzaka couldn't tell clearly. But she still didn't want to face high school students like Nang Xiangshi here. Admit that your values have shifted over the decades. Her lips moved. I must love her too. Bang. He slapped his palms on the table. Sober up. You stupid woman. Well. The tone of surprise was prolonged at this moment. When Matsuzaka Sayuri looked at Nango, who raised her voice in front of her, the words she just retorted also slowly weakened at this moment. The mentality that was still stubbornly resisting became weak at this sound. Did you feel angry when you were in Nang Xiang? He admitted that he did have a point. Because the attitude shown by Sayuri Matsuzaka in front of her was really too irritating. The other party is like a big kid who hasn't had enough fun. He just satisfies the hole in his heart and has never really cared about Matsuzaka Sugar. A long period of indifference. Perfunctory for a long time. Just give superficial care. This is the biggest reason why Matsuzaka Sugar has such a huge emotional void that is almost impossible to fill. After all, from a certain perspective, Sayuri Matsuzaka is the entire spiritual world of Matsuzaka Satu, who has had no parents since she was a child. And Sayuri, you have been satisfying the desires of others. You may not realize that you treat everyone without distinction. Nangxiang had stood up completely at this time, and looked at Sayuri Matsuzaka, who was silent and confused. You were actually Matsuzaka-san's only one. But how did you treat Matsuzaka-san? Rhetorical question. Pause. That's all. Nangxiang Shi took his own steps and walked out. Until he closed the apartment door, Matsuzaka Sayuri still didn't say a word in rebuttal. She sat there in silence for a long time. Then he stood up unsteadily and went to his room. She found an old photo album sitting in the corner. This photo album must have not been used for a long time. The hard paper cover has become wrinkled and the surface has begun to turn yellow. She held out her hand silently. Open a corner of the photo album. There are basically no photos in it. And among these few photos, there is one when I was a kid. Matsuzaka Satu, whose face was full of innocence, looked up at her photo. You were actually Matsuzaka-san's only one. Nangxiang Shi's voice seemed to ring in his ears at this moment. Am I ever Sugar's only one? Sayuri Matsuzaka stroked the surface of the photo, with a wry smile on her lips. She was so focused on filling the hole inside that she didn't notice it. She just taught Matsuzaka Granu what she thought was the form of love. But for a child, it's just that the almost perfunctory words are completely meaningless. Sayuri Matsuzaka slowly knelt down. She has always been focused on filling other people's desires and didn't realize. It turns out that when Matsuzaka Satu was a child, she already had desires and thoughts that wanted to fill her emptiness. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi Iway. Chapter 375. But these were all ignored by her subconsciously. Hug the photo album. Sayuri Matsuzaka can no longer make any sound. Because as Nangxiang said, she found out too. She is a hopelessly stupid woman. Obviously the real love is by your side. But he let her leave. Matsuzaka Sayuri fell silent. When Nangxiang left Matsuzaka Sugar apartment, he couldn't help but shook his head and exhaled at the same time. Call. Although he used such righteous words when talking about Matsuzaka Sayuri, but I'm not much better. Nangxiang takes a step forward. Yes. It's not like he can get there. He said a lot of beautiful words, but in fact he was hesitating whether to become Matsuzaka Sugar's only one. Hesitate, think twice. But this kind of thing obviously cannot be answered by a person walking on the road. He held his chin, then reached out and opened the line chat software. Thought for a while. He reached out and clicked on a chat box on his phone that resembled a weird avatar of a puppet. The most beautiful boy in Tokyo, I have something to discuss with you, Ryo, are you there? The next second. Replied almost instantly. Aloof bassist weirdo, what's up, our? It must be said that Miss Yamada's efficiency has never disappointed Nangxiang Shi. To be able to reply directly so quickly, in every sense, it makes people wonder if she is guarding her chat box 24 hours a day. Nangxiang Shi smiled. This is of course just a thought. Ms. Yamada also has her own things to do. How could you stay by your phone 24 hours a day, waiting for news from him? Nangxiang Shi didn't think much, he just stretched out his hand and told the other party about Matsuzaka Sugar. Again. In front of Ms. Yamada, there is basically nothing to hide. This was exactly what I was thinking about when I was in Nangxiang. Miss Yamada didn't hesitate much either. She responded directly. The aloof bassist, is this just the case? The aloof bassist, just do what she wants no matter what, I will support she. Aloof bass weird, You have to ask me about such a trivial matter, how much do you think I like you? The reply ends here. Still a crisp answer. But her words made Nan Xiangxi shake his head. You will support me no matter what. Didn't solve the problem though. But for some reason, Nan Xiangxi's heart, which had been heavy before, became much more relaxed at this moment. He walked a little more briskly and replied a word of thanks to Miss Yamada. After receiving the reply, then treat me to a meal, Nang Xiang continued walking forward. But this time, before I even took 2 steps, the phone rang again with the sound of receiving a message. This made Nang Xiang a little strange. He took out his phone again and glanced at the messages on it. The message was not sent from Miss Invite Me to Dinner, but from Miss Xinzhou, who had been having an almost unbearable quarrel with her daughter in the past 2 days. New article from The World, Shaijun, this rebellious girl said that she has something very important to tell you, but she has never received a reply from you. Can you see what's going on over there? Have something important to say to him. Nang Xiang future? Never got a reply. Nang Xiang touched his chin a little strangely. Then he suddenly remembered something. Previously, because he couldn't stand the bombardment of Nang Xiang Future's various line information, he directly blocked this rebellious girl selectively. After all, this rebellious girl can bombard him with hundreds of messages even if nothing happens. Even if his answer is simply eat, good morning, and no. Nang Xiang is still enjoying it in the future and is still sending him various messages crazily. He couldn't stand the sound of his cell phone ringing all day long, so Nang Xiangxi blocked this rebellious girl without hesitation. If Akane Shinjo hadn't suddenly mentioned this to him, he would have almost forgotten it. He shook his head speechlessly. Nang Xiangxi reached out and added Nang Xiang's future line back to the whitelist. And this is the move to put the other party back into the whitelist. The next second. Ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong. Almost a series of message prompts sounded. This made Nang Xiangxi's mouth twitch uncontrollably. What the hell is this silly daughter doing? Sick. Why do you look more like a Yandere than a Yandere? He simply lights up the screen. I found the line prompt, you have 99 plus unread messages. This made Nang Xiangxi couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. Nang Xiangmarai, in a sense, she was one of the daughters that he really didn't want to give birth to. But, after all, she is her daughter. And there was something important to say to him. Nang Xiangxi did not hesitate any longer. With a backhand, he chose to open her dialogue box. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Good morning, Dad, the weather is nice. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Good afternoon, Dad, have you eaten? The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Good evening, hey, Dad, I'm going to bed. Do you want to see your daughter's cute sleeping face? Nang Xiang time. Nang Xiang continued to turn his fingers downwards. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Is Dad here? The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Why don't you reply to me, Dad? The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Dad, have you blocked your lovely daughter? The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Dad, please reply quickly. The attached picture shows the Yandere holding a knife in front of the phone. Hiss. Nang Xiangxi couldn't help but take a breath. In every sense of the word, her daughter was too ideologically advanced. He was only glad that he blocked the other party early. Otherwise, no matter who sees the other party's line chat history, they will think that he is being stalked by an older nympho, right? Nang Xiangxi stopped looking at Nang Xiang's future useless harassment words and looked directly at the last line. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Dad, I have something very important to tell you. Reply quickly. This time is really important. It's not like I harassed you before. You also know that everything you said before was to harass me. Nang Xiang was a little speechless. This guy is simply a model of knowing the law and breaking it. She knew clearly that what she did was wrong, but she still did it. But for the important things she said. Nang Xiang, she was still quite curious about this. So he thought for a while and finally reached out and replied. Tokyo's most beautiful boy, what's going on? Stop saying unrealistic things, otherwise I will continue to block you. The message is sent out. Probably waiting on the other end of the phone. There is hardly any waiting time. Nang Xiang over there gave a reply in the future. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. It is really important. Maybe it's about the person you mentioned before named Matsuzaka Satuge. The other party's words made Nang Xiangshi raise his eyebrows. What about Matsuzaka Sugar? He did remember that he mentioned it to Nangomarai, but the other party had made it clear that she had never seen Matsuzaka Satuge. Why did you suddenly speak again? Nang Xiangshi felt a little strange and stretched out his hand to reply. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiu Dao Yu de Ziwei. Chapter 376. The most beautiful boy in Tokyo, are you serious? His words were full of distrust of this unreliable daughter. On the other end of the phone, Nan Xiang was obviously speechless in the future. He didn't expect that she didn't even have this level of trust in her father's mind. There was silence for a while before there was a reply. The dream is to become the most powerful actress in the country. Of course it's true, but it's not clear in the line. Dad, are you coming to Mom's house now? Let's talk about it in person. Let's talk about it in person. Nang Xiangshi glanced at the time. It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I left Sayuri Matsuzaka's house. A trip to Shinjo's house won't take much time. So he raised his hand and replied okay to the other end of the phone. Nang Xiang turned towards the station. Among Tokyo's 23 wards, there is a very special area. It is neither a political center like Chiyodan nor an established educational center like Bunkyo Ward. But it also has high-end apartments, high-end restaurants, high-end entertainment facilities, the best night view of Tokyo in Japan, and even the Tokyo Tower, the spiritual totem of modern Japanese people. People who can live here are either rich or noble. As for Akane Shinjo, the only daughter of the Shinjo family who has emerged as a real estate developer in recent years. The place where she lives is the Minato district, which is known as the gathering place of Tokyo's nouveau riche. She belongs to a real lady from a famous family. This was the first time when Nang Xiang officially visited the Shinjo family. He has only seen it a few times in simulations. And when he actually stood in front of the building in front of him and really saw the Shinjo family, he couldn't help but sigh. It's no wonder that the self in the simulation chose to live alone with Miss Shinjo. Such a good environment. Such a perfect location. In front of you, you can notice the huge area with the naked eye. If you leave it alone, won't it just eat dust? The front yard is made of rustic gravel and koi pond. A backyard filled with landscape bamboo. A sweeping view from here. Have to say, the conditions of the Shinjo family are indeed very favorable. Sigh a little. Nan Xiangshi didn't hesitate, stretched out his hand and pressed the doorbell. With the dull doorbell ringing. At the same time, a sound came from the microphone in front of him. Ah, Shikun, please wait a moment, I will open the door for you right now. As Akane Shinjo's voice fell, at the same time, the gate of the compound opened to both sides. Nang Xiangshi stepped into it, stepped on the road paved with bluestones, and arrived at the door of the Shinjo family villa. He barely had to reach out to ring the doorbell. I could already hear the door opening. Shijun, you are finally here, come on, come in quickly. Akane Shinjo shook her soft short pink and purple hair, smiled and stretched out her hand from behind the door to take Nang Xiangshi's palm. After thoughtfully preparing slippers for Nang Xiang, Akane Shinjo led him inside. Shinjo's house is huge. It seems so from the outside. It feels even more so when viewed from the inside. Nangxiang only felt that he was being pulled forward by Shinjo Akane for a certain distance, and then he came to a wooden door. Without hesitation, he stretched out his hand to open the wooden door, and Nango-shi saw Nango Mirai, who was wearing casual clothes like Shinjo Akane, lying on the soft sofa and playing with her mobile phone. It can be seen that the other party has been very comfortable at Shinjo's house these past few days. Her face was all shiny and pink. I wonder how much Akane Shinjo pampers her. Nangxiang was a little surprised. You must know that Shinjo Akane and her daughter were incompatible with each other before. Why did you completely change your attitude in the past few days? Probably mother and daughter. Despite all the verbal disapproval, when it comes to truly needing each other, these two people will still support each other moving forward. When I was in Nangxiang, I rarely felt like I wanted to praise Nangxiang's future. But before complimenting, snapped. He directly kicked the bra thrown at the door into Nangxiang Mirai's face. Can you clean up the trash in your room first? Nan Xiangxi pointed to the underwear on the floor and couldn't help but speak. Although he is not misophobic, it is impossible for him to like sitting in an environment surrounded by a bunch of girls' underwear. Not to mention it's my daughter's intimate clothing. This made him feel even more uncomfortable. But compared to Nang Xiangxi's words, Nangxiang Mirai on the other side unconcernedly pulled off the bra on his face and said nonchalantly, "What's this, Dad, do you still remember? When I was a child, it was you who changed my diapers. The woman next to you couldn't do that kind of delicate work." At this point, he curled his lips and said seriously, "Anyway, my father took care of me when I was a child, so there's nothing to worry about now, right?" Her tone was calm and her words were conclusive, and she seemed to make some sense. But it's obvious. This truth is an out-and-out fallacy in Nang Xiangxi's eyes. He took a small breath, but wasn't angry. After all, if he gets angry at everything, sooner or later he will be angered to death by the rebellious girl in front of him. So he slowly stretched out a finger and simply said, "I'll count to 3. Snap. As soon as the sentence was spoken, there was no need for Nang Xiangxi to urge him. Nangxiang stood up in the future and began to clean up the scattered things on the ground without hesitation. "I count to 3. This is undoubtedly a very useful tactical weapon for any rebellious son or daughter. Nangxiang is not afraid of her mother in the future, but at the age of 21, she does not dare to disobey her father who says count to 3. Even though Nan Xiang was only 17 years old at this time, he was 4 years younger than her. Under the efforts of Nangxiang future to clean up, the originally messy underwear on the floor was neatly sorted and put into the closet. Next to her, Shinjo Akane also blinked her Akane-colored eyes. It's not like she hasn't preached to Nangxiang in the future. But every time the other party had no intention of listening to her words. As a result, when Nang Xiangxi came over, the other party seemed to have changed his temper. This differential treatment made her somewhat psychologically unbalanced. How come Nang Xiangxi not only has a way to deal with her, but also has a way to deal with her daughter? She stole a glance at Nang Xiang. I just feel that this man is unfathomable in every sense of the word. She thought so, but Nang Xiang didn't mean to care about her thoughts. He just walked into the room and sat directly on the sofa. Then he turned his head and looked at Nango Mirai. "Mirai, you just said on your phone that you told me something important about Matsuzaka sugar, I don't know what it is." Then Nan Xiangxi emphasized again, "Don't suddenly tell me at this time that you were joking with me on the phone." Ahem. Nang Xiang couldn't help but cough twice in the future. She could hear the seriousness in Nang Xiangxi's words. Not daring to show off any further, he simply took out his phone and said, "There is indeed something very important to tell my father. Didn't you want me to think about Miss Matsuzaka sugar last time?" Her voice paused. "I also said at the time, there is no memory of Miss Matsuzaka sugar, right?" "Well, that's right. You said at the time that you had never heard of this person in the future world, let alone seen him. Nan Xiangxi nodded. Originally, I thought this matter would just pass and be over. Nang Xiang turned on the screen of his mobile phone in the future and continued to speak, but I found, that is not the case at all. Although I have no obvious memory of the name Matsuzaka Sugar, I seem to have an impression of it in other places. She slowly slid her phone upward. At the same time, a photo appeared in Nang Xiangxi's eyes. This is. Nan Xiangxi's eyes flickered slightly, and his expression was a little surprised. Because he saw it on the screen of Nang Xiang Future's mobile phone. It seems to be in the corner of a banquet. A pink-haired girl stood at the dining table holding a fanny pack. That look. It is actually 70–80% similar to the current Matsuzaka Sugar. Because I really cared about it too much, and it seemed to have some impression, so I looked through the photo album on my mobile phone, and found this in it. Nang Xiang Mirai said with a serious expression. That day should be the coming-of-age ceremony for me and several other sisters and younger sisters. Chapter 263. Your wife ran away with the ball. 5,000 words. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiu Dao Yu de Ziwei. Chapter 377. The characters of Mirai Nango and Akane Shinjo are actually similar. She basically doesn't remember things that she doesn't care about. Not even impressed by it. If Nang Xiang hadn't asked her about Matsuzaka Sugar. It is estimated that Nang Xiang will never make a special trip to look through his mobile photo album in the future. It does look a lot like Matsuzaka-san. Taking Nang Xiang Mirai's mobile phone over, Nang Xiang looked at the pink-haired girl in the photo holding the edge of the dining table with her hands and raising her head. The girl in the photo has long pink hair. He has fair skin, regular facial features, a calm face, and his eyes are big and lively. It's different from that long pink hair. She has a pair of black eyes, as bright as black pearls. In the photo, she raised her head expressionlessly, not knowing what she was looking at or thinking about. Nang Xiangxi shook his head. Just from the appearance. This girl does look a lot like Matsuzaka Sugar. If you let Nang Xiangxi think about it. This girl is most likely the child he gave birth to after his union with Matsuzaka Satu. But if that's the case, it is impossible for Nang Xiang not to have an impression of this pink-haired girl in the future. Although this wicked daughter is very unreliable. But it's not like she can't even remember her older sisters. And more importantly, Nango Mirai, who has never seen Matsuzaka Sugar's appearance, why would he know that this pink-haired girl is related to Matsuzaka Sugar? Nang Xiangxi raised his head and glanced at Nang Xiang Mirai, and said, Mirai, you just talked about the coming-of-age ceremony for you and your other sisters, and then what? This rebellious girl paused only halfway through her words. So far there is no follow-up. This made Nang Xiangxi couldn't help but ask directly. Under Nang Xiangxi's gaze, Nang Xiangbaobao stuck out his tongue in embarrassment. No, Dad, aren't you still thinking about this? Wait a minute. She thought for a while and then continued. That was the day when my other sisters and I came into adulthood. Dad, as you know, besides my mother, I also have several godmothers, like Hengxia's mother, Liang's mother, etc. She stretched out her finger. My other sisters and I were basically born in the same year. Here I have to say that he is worthy of being a father. I didn't expect that he can not only satisfy my mother, but also satisfy so many of my godmothers. When Nan Xiang said this in the future, he chuckled. This made Nang Xiangxi couldn't help but hold his forehead, and then he stretched out his hand to hit her on the head with an expressionless expression. Tell the important point. It hurts, well, isn't that what I'm saying? Dad. Covering his head, Nangxiang Mirai suppressed his thoughts of teasing and joking, and continued. Because several of our sisters came of age at the same year, the mothers thought it would be better to hold a more formal coming-of-age ceremony, which can be regarded as commemorating our adulthood. She sat down. We also held a quite grand banquet at that time, and invited many people over. When it comes to this, Nangxiang took his mobile phone over in the future and pointed at the pink-haired girl on it. To be honest, I know many of the people at the banquet, or have impressions of them. After all, they are friends of our sisters, or maybe dad still has mom's friends. The voice paused slightly. But, this girl with pink hair, I don't recognize her at all, I don't even have an impression of her. Yes. Nangxiang Mirai didn't have the slightest impression of this pink-haired girl who suddenly appeared at the Nangxiang family's daughter's coming-of-age ceremony banquet. Because the other party's appearance is not inferior to that of the 6 sisters from their Nangxiang family. Therefore, the daughters of the Nangxiang family are very concerned about her. We even made a special trip to discuss it for this pink-haired girl. But because none of the sisters had the slightest impression. So just think of her as the daughter of some mother's friend. The topic should have ended here. But, after the coming-of-age ceremony was over, the pink-haired girl in the photo did not leave immediately. Instead, she made a special trip to hand a letter to my mother. When he said this, Nango Mirai turned his attention to Akane Shinjo. Akane Shinjo pointed at her face strangely. I gave the letter to my mother at that time. Because I was really curious, I made a special trip there and took a photo of the letter with my mobile phone. What's the content of that letter? The spirit came when Nangxiang came. Unexpectedly, his daughter was quite reliable at the critical moment, so he asked directly before she finished speaking. Then. Well. Under Nangxiang's trusting gaze, Nangxiang opened his mouth in the future. Then she lowered her head in embarrassment. Well, I just read the beginning of that letter, and I just knew the girl's name. After all, I went to sing with a few older sisters and younger sisters. Nangxiang Shi. All right. As expected, his daughter still smelled familiar. The so-called reliability is simply an illusion. But I still took photos anyway. Nangxiang Shi took a deep breath, and then continued to ask, where are the photos? Ahem, because I went to sing with my sisters and I was so happy that day. Dad, you allowed us to drink. I didn't expect the wine to taste so good, and Julie Auntie said the same thing, I'm telling you. Nangxiang said to Nangxiang excitedly in the future. In response, Nangxiang Shi just silently raised his loving hand. Well. Nangxiang's delicate face suddenly became confused. She hurriedly said, no. Well, Dad, because I was too happy to drink that day, I didn't read the letter. The letter should still be saved in my mobile phone. When it comes to this. Nangxiang coughed dryly in the future, of course, it's possible that I deleted it as document trash. Nangxiang Shi. He rubbed his brows and finally couldn't help but speak, the future. Are you really my biological daughter? Of course. If it's fake, can it be replaced? Nangxiang Mirai said, patting his chest without hesitation. Then why haven't you inherited any of Akane and I's intelligence? Seeing her silly actions, Nangxiang Shi twitched the corner of his mouth and asked. He now really doubted whether this daughter was his biological child. He and Akane Shinjo's IQs are not low either. One ranks first in the whole grade, and the other ranks second in the whole grade. Why did your crotch look like this when you arrived at Nangxiang Future? Nangxiang Shi shook his head. Forget it. There is no use in worrying about these things all the time. Let's check the phone first. Nangxiang Shi spoke directly. Now he just hopes that Nangxiang still has the letter from the pink-haired girl in his future mobile phone. Otherwise, the only clue about Matsuzaka Sugar's future route would be cut off. Seeing the serious expression on Nang Xiang's face when he saw it, Nang Xiang no longer had the intention to joke around in the future. She nodded, and then her fingers began to slide across the screen of her phone. Have to say, young people of any era seem to have their own unique way of playing with mobile phones. Nang Xiangxi felt the other person's fingers flying on the screen of his mobile phone. Then I heard the other party's voice of surprise. Found it? Dad. Oh. Nang Xiangxi, who had not had much hope at first, immediately became energetic after hearing Nang Xiang's voice in the future. His salty daughter had finally made a great contribution. In this way, he should be able to learn a thing or two about Matsuzaka Sugar's situation in the future. He cheered up and looked at Nang Xiang Future's mobile phone screen. Then, essay title, My Dream When I Grow Up. Written by Nang Xiang Future. My dream when I grow up is to become the most powerful actress in Japan, to make everything work according to my ideas, and to find a way to make Japan recognize incest marriage. Because only in this way can I marry the most handsome father in the world. My dad is the best and best person in the world, much more mature than the boys in the class. I will definitely be my father's bride in the future. To this end, I will first become the most powerful actress in Japan, and then use my influence to run for parliament, enter officialdom, become the Prime Minister of Japan, and let everyone recognize the legal provisions of consanguineous marriage. Teachers comment, let your father come to see me now, I have something very important to discuss with him. Nang Xiangxi. After reading this more than 100 words, which was obviously the content of an elementary school student's composition, Nang Xiang looked sideways and looked at Nang Xiang Mirai with a blank expression. Then he commented seriously. I think that in the future, with your IQ, you will be able to become a famous actress. Things like Prime Minister and Minister are not suitable for you. No, it's not that photo. And Dad? Don't be so serious about commenting on the composition I wrote when I was 6 years old. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiu Dao Yu de Ziwei. Chapter 378. Nang Xiang Mirai obviously also saw the content on the screen of his mobile phone. Her face turned as red as an octopus in a steamer, and she hurriedly reached out and slid the photo to the previous one. So far. It was only then that Nang Xiang finally saw what Nang Xiang Mirai said was the letter left by the pink-haired girl. Black and white text, no fancy decorations. The extremely correct font remains on top, giving it a crisp and neat aesthetic. Nang Xiangxi read it word by word. Mr. Nang Xiang. Quiet skipped. Presumably you don't know who I am, nor my intention in leaving this letter, but no matter what, as long as you open the letter, I very much hope that you can continue to read it. I wonder if you still remember a woman named Matsuzaka Satu? Perhaps you don't care, and you may have even forgotten her as a person, but no matter what, there is one thing I must say to you. My mother, Matsuzaka Satu, passed away last month, and I am her daughter. The name is Matsuzaka Salt. Matsuzaka Satu passed away. Nang Xiangxi's eyes paused. He really didn't expect it, not just in the simulation. In a certain route in the future world, Matsuzaka Sugar also died early. But this time it was different from the simulation. Matsuzaka Sato left behind her daughter. Matsuzaka Salt. Nang Xiang murmured this name to himself. The other party's naming is very much in the style of the Matsuzaka family. But if Matsuzaka Shio is his daughter with Matsuzaka Sugar, why didn't the other party change his surname to Nang Xiang after him? But continue to use Matsuzaka as your surname? And why don't Matsuzaka Salt and Matsuzaka Sugar live with them? Nang Xiangxi had more doubts in his mind. He could only continue to look down. I actually didn't want to appear here. Likewise, I don't want to disturb the lives of you, your wife, and your daughters. But I really want to see you. You must know that my mother has been chanting your name all her life. To be honest, my mother is not a qualified mother, because after I was born, she rarely smiled, as if there was nothing in this world that she cared about. Even when facing me, she remained silent and unwilling to spend energy talking to me. Indifference is the only impression I have of my mother since I was a child. Only occasionally when she turns to the photo of you and her, a smile will appear on her face. As a child, I couldn't understand this. But when I got older, I realized that you in the photo were the person she loved throughout her life. Probably because she loves you too deeply. This is true even if I get good grades in school, even if I have good talent in sports. She never smiled at me. But I know that it's not that my mother doesn't love me, she may not be good at expressing her emotions so, although he never smiled at me. But every time I achieve something in school, there will always be an extra popular toy on my bedside. My mother is not unpopular even with me, many men invite her out for dinner. As long as my mother has that idea, it might not be difficult to find another father for me, right? But when my mother faced these men, she refused them all. I know, these are actually all because of you. My mother doesn't have a serious job, she just does odd jobs outside. It's actually very difficult to raise me. I once asked her to contact you to get some financial assistance from you. I even had a big fight with her over this. That was the first time I quarreled with my mother, who never quarrels and is not good at expressing her emotions. Seeing this, Nangxiang closed his eyes. It was hard for him to imagine the pink-haired girl who always had a peaceful and quiet smile on her face arguing with others. I didn't understand it before, but now I seem to understand my mother's thoughts. Maybe she doesn't want to bring trouble to your life, or maybe she never made any plans to meet you. After I entered high school, my mother's health began to deteriorate. The doctor told my mother that she had accumulated physical and mental stress from working as a day-night casual worker for a long time, and hoped that she could take a break. But I know that my mother's mental pressure never comes from the pressure of working outside. She is like a balloon that is constantly inflating, visibly embarrassing herself. I also persuaded her, hoping that she could take a rest, and told her that I could also drop out of school and work to reduce the pressure in life. My mother, who had never looked at me in the eyes, refused to agree to my request while providing me with living expenses for my studies. She still worked hard on her own. Nan Xiangxi shook his head gently and sighed lightly. She is a single mother who does not have a suitable serious job and wants to live in Tokyo with her children. This is a very stressful thing. He continued to look down. Have I ever hated you? I think there is. You are my father, but you have never looked at me since I was born, never touched my head with your palm, never smiled at me, and never asked about my life. Obviously your other daughters have received such a good education and have never had to worry about living expenses, let alone working part-time outside their mother without telling them. I am obviously your daughter too, why can't I enjoy these benefits? Why do I have to endure these treatments? Like a mouse, I hid with my mother in the huge Tokyo because I couldn't afford the rent. I looked for low-rent rooms because I couldn't afford the uniform. I wore old uniforms to school every year, enduring the weirdness of my classmates' gaze. When you were a child without a father, you would also be called a bastard that no one wanted among the children around you. I blame this, feel angry about this. Is there anything wrong? But hatred has no effect. My mother passed away last month. She died suddenly of heart palpitations while at work. The owner of the izakaya where she worked was a kind man, and he arranged a funeral specifically for her. But I really don't have the extra money to buy another tomb for my mother, so I can only enshrine her at home. The mother in the photo still has no smile at all, just plain. Just like she came to this world hastily and died hastily. Can't leave any impression. When she was resting at home, she told me that she left you after having a relationship with you and gave birth to me on her own initiative. She told me not to hate you, let alone have any prejudice against you. Everything was actually her own problem. My mother at that time was full of apologies. She told me that the person she felt most sorry for in this world was me. I will remember her last wish and try to live on. Please rest assured, Mr. Nangxiang, I have dropped out of school to work outside. Although my salary is not as generous as your family fortune, I should be able to live on relying on some inheritance left by my mother. There is actually a lot more I want to say, but I am limited by the manuscript paper, so I'll end it here. Your daughter who has never been masked, Matsuzaka Salt Pen. Chapter 264. She from the future 4100 words. Nangxiang was silent. Judging from the details revealed in Matsuzaka Shio's letter, he can basically determine a few things. Among this root in the future world, Matsuzaka Granis had a relationship with him, and the two gave birth to a daughter, Matsuzaka Shio. But based on performance in simulations, Matsuzaka Granu is actually very afraid of giving birth to a child. Because she is in a family like Sayuri Matsuzaka, she was afraid that she would never be able to shoulder the responsibilities of a qualified mother. So, after pregnancy, out of inner worries and not wanting to drag down Nangxiang, Matsuzaka Sugar finally made the move to run away with the ball. And after giving birth to Shio Matsuzaka, because Matsuzaka Granis did not find an ideal and suitable job, he kept doing odd jobs to support Matsuzaka Shio's education and life. This is a significant expense. Nango even thought that Matsuzaka Sugar might have asked her aunt Matsuzaka Sayuri for help. That's why Matsuzaka Shio was able to be pulled up. But due to the accumulated fatigue from long hours of work, coupled with the huge mental pressure, Matsuzaka Sugar's physical condition is not optimistic as in the simulation. But even so, she never asked Nangxiang Shi for help. Nangxiang Shi couldn't help but shake his head. The main reason is that he never thought that Matsuzaka Granu could actually dribble the ball and run away. When I was simulating Ichiri Goto, in fact, he was worried that the opponent would make such a cunning move as running away with the ball. But unexpectedly, Goto did not do anything like that. Matsuzaka Sugar did not hesitate. You pink hairs all have some serious illnesses, right? Pregnant women just stay and rest and have others take care of them. What is running around with the ball? He was speechless and choked. The ones with similar expressions to Nango Shi were Akane Shinjo and Mirai Nango next to them. Especially Nangxiang Mirai, she never thought that her father had such a romantic relationship, let alone that she had a sister named Matsuzaka Shio. Not to mention what happened to Matsuzaka Shio. There has never been a father's love, only a mother to depend on each other. She would worry about living expenses that she had never worried about. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi. Chapter 379. He would even go out to work as a study student while he was in school. From the perspective of Nangxiang future, who has been pampered since childhood, this is simply unimaginable. She glanced at the envelope on the phone screen, and then at Nangxiang's expression, who was silent. After hesitating for a while, he finally spoke, "Dad, this, Xiao Yan, Shi. I know what you want to say." Nangxiang Shi, who had been silent until now, spoke. He turned his head to look at Nangxiang Mirai, and then said, "It's true that I'm sorry for her. Although it is my future self. But it is also true that the future self has indeed failed to fulfill its parenting obligations." "No, that's not the case." Shinjo Akane also coughed lightly and comforted in a low voice, "Look, the letter said that it was this Matsuzaka Sato who left on his own initiative after having a relationship with Toki-kun. Although Japan is not big, it is big. It's very simple to hide someone. There's no need for Shijun to feel guilty about such a thing." She made a comforting sound. Although it does sound reasonable, it is indeed because of Matsuzaka Sugar's running with the ball that caused this series of things to happen. But putting all the blame on the wife is not what a good husband does. If I had been more careful, noticed the other person's abnormalities, and noticed the other person's desire to leave, things would not have developed like this. Nan Xiangxi waved his hands, not wanting to make any excuses on this matter. Because he obviously knew that Matsuzaka Granu was a girl with an extremely unstable mental state. But he still let her leave from under his eyes. This in itself is already a dereliction of duty. He said this. On the other side, Akane Shinjo and Mirai Nango fell into silence. Obviously, the two of them didn't know how to comfort Nan Xiang. However, why are you showing such expressions? Nang Xiang, who they originally thought needed comfort, suddenly raised his head and glanced at the two of them strangely. Why? Nang Xiangxi was stunned by this sudden change in his expression. Akane Shinjo and Mirai Nango both opened their mouths. Finally, it was Akane Shinjo who spoke cautiously. Which, Shijun? Isn't he unhappy? Yes. After reading this letter, whoever it is will probably be unhappy, right? Nang Xiangxi spoke naturally. That. Akane Shinjo and Mirai Nango were a little incomprehensible when they looked at Nango, who seemed to have regained his strength. Actually, there's nothing hard to understand. Nan Xiangxi continued, to put it bluntly, these things are things that will happen in the future. Since they are things that will happen in the future. Nang Xiangxi's tone paused slightly. Then. That's what can be changed. His expression changed. There was only calmness and an indescribable, reassuring confidence in his voice. Listening to Nang Xiangxi's words and his tone that seemed to be able to soothe people's hearts. Nang Xiang was stunned after hearing this. She subconsciously looked at her father. At this time, Nang Xiang seemed to understand something in the future. Why is it that my mother, who was such an excellent student when she was a student, can't help but fall in love with her father? Because the man in front of me never seems to evade his responsibilities. Nang Xiangxi did not continue talking. Just stretch out your finger and gently slide the screen of your phone. Under such actions. Soon the picture on the screen was frozen. It was a picture of the pink-haired girl Shio Matsuzaka raising her head. Before, Nang Xiang didn't understand what kind of emotion her expression contained when she raised her head and seemed to be looking at something. But now, he seemed to understand. Perhaps there is something hidden beneath Matsuzaka Shio's expressionless face. There are unspeakable regrets, and there is also unspeakable envy. Like the Nang Xiang sisters on the stage, she was at the age of coming of age, but she could only stand under the stage and look up at them. There may be some dissatisfaction. Maybe there are also complaints against him as a father. Complaining about why she had already appeared at the coming-of-age ceremony. His own father didn't recognize him either. Nang Xiang thought of the words Matsuzaka Shio wrote in the letter. I will remember her last wish and try to live on. Even so. But what is she thinking in her heart? There must still be resentment, right? After all, he is absolutely unqualified as a father. He had no obligation to raise her, nor did he give her any spiritual care from his father. What exactly does Matsuzaka Shio think? It is unknown when in Nang Xiang. He could only look through this photo. Thinking and imagining through the letter that I wanted to write but could not continue due to the length of the manuscript. Nang Xiang sighed slightly. At this time, he really wished that he could directly have the ability to travel through time. Don't say anything else. At least Matsuzaka Shio must be allowed to experience the same stable and comfortable life as her older sisters. He thought so. Then. Ding, you got the another root card, she from the future. A crisp beep suddenly sounded in my ears. Ah! The simulator prompt sounded suddenly in his ears, making Nan Xiangxi show a slightly surprised expression. He put down Nang Xiang Mirai's cell phone, then looked up at the light blue page that suddenly popped up in front of him. Another root card, she from the future. The soul is trembling, and there are thousands of words in my heart that I want to express, but that time will never happen again. Everything has returned to the original point. You have nothing to do with her anymore. Even if you are full of regrets, you can only stay on a simple piece of letter paper. She is silent in the photo, looking up. Envious. Happy. Envy. Complain? When all time passes again, although you cannot undo all regrets, what choice will you make? One-time prop, spend 1200 heartbeat points. Activate this root card. You will go to that time, maybe, there is still room for redemption between you and her. 1200 heartbeat points? She from the future? The simulation page that suddenly appeared in front of him almost made it clear to Nangxiang that as long as he used her from the future, there would be a chance to restore the relationship between him and Matsuzakashio. But this is 1200 heartbeat points. Even if Nangxiang Shi's relationship with Matsuzaka Sugar has been going well in the past 2 days. But the accumulated heartbeat value is only about 1890. If the heartbeat value of 1200 is converted into simulation, it can be simulated 4 times. You can experience the simulation experience yourself once. Just to change things that haven't happened in the future, is there any point in using such a prop? It's not a loss at all. Nangxiang Shi made his decision very simply without any hesitation. Originally, after reading Matsuzaka Shio's letter, he was choked up and had nowhere to vent. The simulator prompt that suddenly popped up in front of him immediately cheered him up. It's just a simple 1200 heartbeat value. This is nothing at all. Even if it's something elusive, something in the future world that hasn't even happened yet. But the opportunity to recover is now in front of Nangxiang Shi. In this case, there is no need to hesitate. He handed Nangomori's mobile phone to the other party, then turned his head and looked at Shinjo Akane. Akane, I'm a little sleepy for the moment. Can I sleep here for a while? Hey? There's nothing wrong with me. Akane Shinjo glanced at Nangoshi strangely. 1 second Nangxiang was still full of ambitions and wanted to change the future. Why did he want to fall asleep directly the next second? But she had no reason to refuse Nangxiang Shi. After all, this is the first time that the other party is resting at home. Maybe we can take advantage of Nanxiang's time to take a rest with his eyes closed and take 2 more pictures of each other's sleeping faces. She agreed. Nangxiang on the other side has no reason to refuse in the future. Nangxiang Shi found a comfortable sleeping position and lay down directly, then looked at the her from the future root card in front of him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi. Chapter 380. There is no hesitation. He reached out and clicked directly. Do you want to spend 1200 heartbeat points to activate this item, whether? The simulator prompt pops up in front of you. Nangxiang didn't hesitate at all and clicked yes directly. Consciousness began to sink at this moment. At the same time, the images and simulated text began to flash back in front of me. The default time node selection is Nangxiang's sister's coming of age ceremony day. She from the future is activated. In front of you is the guest reception scene. Decorate the scene sumptuously. People coming and going. The table is dotted with sumptuous food. The figures in the corner were discussing things with soft voices and smiles. Everything looked so joyful. This atmosphere of indulging in happiness and joy is normal for everyone. Because today is the day when Nangxiang's daughter holds her coming-of-age ceremony. From a distance, you can even see the shadows of Yamada's parents, Goto's parents, Ijishi Hoshika, and others. As relatives from Nangxiang, they talk together. And at the top are the lovely-looking wives of Nangxiang Shi. Nangxiang Ili has long pink hair and a gentle and delicate expression, which can easily arouse the protective desire of others, but his figure is still very plump and perfect, making people unable to help but take a second look. Nangxiang Hengxia slightly grew her hair into a high ponytail, but the enthusiasm and cheerfulness in her eyes could not be concealed. In addition, there is the eldest lady Nango Ryo, who has an expressionless face and is as cold as a flower on the mountain. Nango Ikuyo, who is good at receiving and talking to others, Nango Ryo, who is intellectual and steady, and Nango Akane, who smiles like a little devil. Time has not left scratches on the faces of Nangxiangxi's wives, but has made them more mature and beautiful. And right next to them, several girls with similar looks to them but who looked particularly youthful and energetic were chattering excitedly, discussing which karaoke to go to next to sing and which barbecue restaurant to drink. These girls are the protagonists of this coming-of-age ceremony for the Nangxiang family, the 6 Nangxiang sisters. This is a coming-of-age ceremony that the Nangxiang family spent a lot of effort to create for them. Many of their friends were present to offer their blessings. But none of this has anything to do with me. Standing in the corner, Matsuzaka Shio looked up at all this. His eyes looked particularly calm at this moment. She thought her heart would surge when she saw the scene before her. But my heart is just like the mother who has passed away, I can't feel the slightest warmth. Even she is also a member of the Nangxiang family. Even she has the blood of the Nangxiang family flowing through her body. She thinks. Since it is a coming-of-age ceremony for the Nangxiang sisters. After this coming-of-age ceremony is over, I should be considered an adult, right? Now that I am an adult, then you should give up on certain things. Just like that, not being noticed by anyone, and not being liked by anyone. Matsuzaka Shio was silent, raising his head and looking at everything in front of him, quietly waiting for the end of everything in front of him. However, can we chat for a while? A voice suddenly came from behind. This made Matsuzaka Shio turn around in surprise. Subsequently, then she saw it. A handsome man wearing a spring gown was standing behind her with a smile. Nangxiang Time. Chapter 265. Daughter's Living Environment 7100 words. Matsuzaka Shio never thought that she would meet her biological father, Nangxiang, in such a way, in such a scene, and under such circumstances. She couldn't help but turn her head and look at the man beside her. The man was wearing a spring gown, with clean and pure black eyes, a handsome appearance, and a slight smile on his lips. It was as if just standing next to him and talking to him gave me an indescribable feeling of comfort. Even though the other person's appearance is so different from the young one in the photo, Matsuzaka Shio, who has memorized the other person's appearance since he was a child, will never mistake him. This is the father that his mother, Matsuzaka Sugar, has always missed, Nango Toki. Growing up, Matsuzaka Shio actually wanted to see his father again all the time, hoping to talk to him. I hope to be able to throw myself into my father's arms and act like a spoiled child like other girls. But at this moment, after seeing each other, the pink-haired Shio Matsuzaka remained silent. Because she really didn't know where to start. She didn't even know how to face the man in front of her that her mother had longed for. Although she wanted to ask the other party whether he still remembered her mother. Although she really hoped that the other person standing in front of her would recognize her. But when the words came to his mouth, all he could do was swallow his throat without strength. It was as if through such actions, she could swallow the thousands of words in her heart. Maybe she still couldn't forgive Nangxiangxi in front of her. Dissatisfaction with him. For his complaints. At this moment when I saw him, my heart began to ferment. But always remaining silent does not have the ability to advance the topic to the next step. So Matsuzaka Shio raised his head, tried hard not to look at Nango-shi's expression next to him, and spoke slowly. Mr. Nangxiang must be one of the protagonists of this coming-of-age ceremony. Why are you standing in such a corner? For some reason, Shio Matsuzaka decided to hide his identity from Nango Toki in front of him. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and pointed at Nangxiang Mirai and others on the stage. As adults, they are undoubtedly the protagonists today. As their father, Nangxiang is undoubtedly one of the protagonists. Matsuzaka didn't understand either. Why, as the head of the family, Nangxiang, like her, likes to stand in such a corner that is not noticeable at all. She took the initiative to speak, and Nangxiang beside her also smiled and spoke under her gaze. Speaking of adults, is actually just a joke. These little girls are far from mature enough. If they say they are adults, it actually means that it is legal for them to drink from now on. They are not considered adults at all. I don't know until what time I will be led to drink after tonight. As for why I am standing in this corner where no one is. The man in front of me smiled and tilted his head. I just don't want to stand on top and be drunk. As he spoke, he winked at Matsuzaka. Even though the other party is over 40. But its charm for women has not diminished at all. Even Matsuzaka couldn't help but have a hint of blush on his originally plain face when he saw his playful actions. But she quickly reacted and shook her head hastily. What are you embarrassed about? The man in front of me is the culprit who has forgotten my mother and me until today. I was attracted by just one look from him. This is too spineless. She kept emphasizing in her heart. At the same time, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Sure enough, Nangxiang still didn't recognize her. Not hopeful though. But inexplicably, Matsuzaka still hopes that Nangxiang can recognize him. After all, every child who has never received father's love actually longs for his father's care deep in his heart. Matsuzaka thought this way, but for some reason he still didn't move his eyes away from Nangxiang. Is that so? Matsuzaka responded calmly. Then he turned his attention back to the stage. The 6 Nangxiang sisters on the stage made her feel inexplicably envious in her heart. Because they can continue to grow under the gaze of Nangxiang and each other, and since I was a child, I have never experienced any other gaze except my mother. And even the mother who never showed a foreign smile to her passed away last month. The thought of this. Matsuzaka originally calm mood suddenly became somewhat disturbed at this moment. There was a dull feeling in her chest, and she couldn't help but reach out and cover her chest. She has been dependent on her mother since she was a child, and she has worked hard to live. I have been living alone since last month. To be honest, Matsuzaka didn't even feel that sad on the day his mother actually passed away. But as time goes by, she gradually began to live alone. Eat alone. Doing laundry alone. My love simulation with them. Author, Chiudeo Udazi. Chapter 381. A man is sitting on the sofa watching TV. A man faces an empty house. Later, just living in the room where she lived with her mother made her feel great suffering. But sadness can only return to peace in the heart, just like returning to the silent forest at dusk. Only on a special day, sitting in a familiar place and seeing those familiar old objects, did I feel sad. I wish it was just a depressing nightmare, even if I was worried about it. After my mother passed away last month, not many friends even came to pay their respects in the morning hall. Only her friend Hideshoko came to the door and expressed his willingness to love her as his own daughter. What was her mood like at that time? Matsuzaka couldn't tell. Maybe she also hoped that at that time, Nangxiang could suddenly stand up and express his willingness to be her support when she was alone and helpless. Speaking of which, why is this young lady standing here alone? Where are your friends? Where are your family members? While Matsuzaka was thinking, Nango Toki next to him suddenly spoke. His tone was calm and his eyes were gentle. Listening to his words, Matsuzaka was silent for a moment. Then he shook his head. They all have their own things to do, and I'm the only one here. She answered so briefly. That's right. Nangxiang made a sound. He also followed her gaze. After a while, he suddenly said, "Actually, miss, you look quite like someone I know." Nang Xiangshi's words sounded very calm. But in the calmness there is an inexplicable feeling of loneliness. And his words moved Matsuzaka Shio's heart even more. "Looks a lot like someone I know. Is it possible?" She secretly suppressed the throbbing in her heart and pretended to be surprised. "Someone you know?" "Yeah. Someone I know." Nan Xiangxi nodded. Looking at the daughters on the stage, he continued to speak. There was also a little regret in his voice. "That person showed up at the most important moment in my life and then disappeared at the most important time in my life," he muttered. "If she was pregnant at that time, she would have given birth to a child. If the child was raised healthily by her, he would be about your age." When he said this, Nan Xiangxi's voice paused. These words seemed to be spoken to himself, but also to Matsuzaka Shio. Matsuzaka Shio didn't answer. Just listening to these words, she felt something else inexplicably in her heart. My father has not forgotten my mother. In fact, my father has always missed my mother. At this moment, she suddenly had the urge to confess her identity to Nan Xiangxi in front of her. But she didn't do that. She just said suddenly, "If you miss them so much, then why did Mr. Nangxiang take action and try to find them?" "Yes. Since I miss them very much. Then take the time to find them. Just standing here talking, it feels more or less like standing and talking without back pain." Facing her doubts, Nan Xiangxi's attitude was much more frank. He asked, "Do you think I didn't do this? In fact, I spent a lot of energy, time, and money looking for them, but they are really good at hiding." Nang Xiangxi sighed. This statement is not a lie. In this timeline, Nang Xiang did spend a lot of time and money looking for Matsusaka sugar poplar and Matsusaka salt. But no matter how you search, the final result is just nothing. Japan is not that big, but there is more than enough room to hide two people. Nang Xiang made such a sigh. The sincere feelings in this sentence also made Matsuzaka Shio next to him silent for a long time. She looked at this man who was over 40 years old. In his heart, he felt more or less relieved that his mother was still reluctant to part with him. "At least my father has not forgotten my mother. He did not forget about himself and his mother as he thought." There is nothing else to say. Just know this. Matsuzaka Shio, who came here today, is actually quite satisfied. She had no intention of identifying herself or recognizing Nang Xiangxi in front of her. After all, in her opinion, a girl with unknown origins like her suddenly became relatives with the 6 sisters of the Nangxiang family, and the Nangxiang family suddenly had another relative. It is probably very troublesome for them. I can still hold on. Since you can still persevere, just go on alone. She thought so, then looked at the coming-of-age ceremony that was about to end, and turned her head. "Your daughter's coming-of-age ceremony is almost over, then it's almost time for me to leave. Father, Mr. Nangxiang, you should also go about your own business, right?" "That's what you said." In response to her words, Nang Xiangxi in front of him seemed to nod in agreement. "The coming-of-age ceremony for my daughters has ended. As a father, I should send my blessings to them." "Well, that's right." "That's it?" He looked at Nan Xiang and nodded in thought. Matsuzaka Shio slowly stepped forward. The Nangxiang family is still the Nangxiang family. Nothing will change because of her arrival or her departure. The same goes for my elder sister and younger sister. It was just when she was thinking this and walking out. Snap! At some point, a hand stretched out from the side and grabbed her palm. This sudden change made Matsuzaka Shio a little confused. Her pink lips parted slightly. Those black eyes that were exactly the same as those in Nangxiang were full of surprise. "What are you doing, Mr. Nangxiang?" She couldn't understand it. Why did Nanxiangshi suddenly reach out and grab her? She obviously planned to leave right now. While Matsuzaka was thinking this, Nango Toki on the other side smiled and spoke. Didn't I say it? I want to give my blessing to my daughter. His voice sounded so natural. Matsuzaka brain shut down for a moment. But she quickly reacted and pointed towards the stage. But Mr. Nangxiang, isn't your daughter on the stage? Why did you catch me? She couldn't understand it. However, the future girls on stage are my daughters, but besides them, there is also a little guy who is unwilling to admit his identity and thoughts. Nangxiangshi still had a smile on his lips. But the movements of his hands didn't mean to relax at all. And his words made Matsuzaka-shio's heart explode. Exposed. Exposed yourself? Why? I should have been very careful about my words and deeds. Why is it still exposed? Shio Matsuzaka couldn't understand. Even if Nangxiangshi had a photo of his mother, Matsuzaka took. But that was also a photo of my mother who had just graduated from college more than 20 years ago. Not to mention that although she looks somewhat similar to his mother, Nangxiangshi has never seen her, let alone how Nangxiangshi is sure that Matsuzaka Granis gave birth to a daughter. In case Matsuzaka Granis gives birth to a daughter, is it a boy? Matsuzaka Shio was a little flustered. When I came here, she has actually considered all possibilities. But like now, my identity was exposed in a short time. She had never expected such a thing. Could this be the so-called blood relationship, direct induction of blood being thicker than water? Matsuzaka Shio didn't understand at all. But she still decided to follow the path she decided.